Welcome back to the Tailosive EV podcast with your host for this week, Mike. Hello, how's it going, everyone? And I'm joined today by probably one of the best co-hosts that I've had. Sorry, Drew. Randy, how's it going?
Ooh, I outranked Drew. I feel good. You make me feel good. Things are going good now. Yeah, this was great.
Well, who's here and who isn't, right? Nah. Drew's having
Same could be
fun on
said
his
about me
island adventure.
sometimes. Same could be said about. I think you've taken a few leave of absence, just a little bit. I think. Yeah, it
I would hope
happens.
so. If not, then I'd be called a workaholic at this point. But
Yeah,
well, I
yeah.
will say seems to be constant in this timeline right now is everyone adopting NACS. I don't know if you've noticed this trend, but it seems like maybe not every single charging station company that's out there, but it seems like most of them, like Blink, Kemper Power, ChargePoint, many others are going forward, following through with Ford and GM on the decision with adopting NACS. But in this case, it's for charging stalls instead of vehicles, which is nice because that way those that don't have a adapter that's included with their car, like most Model 3 and Y owners, and I guess maybe S and X owners these days, I'd have to check on that. But if you obtain one in the next few weeks, you won't have an adapter, but it sounds like in the next year or so you won't need one.
Yeah, I have my adapter in the car. I keep it with me. You never know.
Right.
That was
Exactly.
back in the at least in 2019. Uh, every non-supercharger station that I was in contact with in San Diego were all free. So
Oh.
ChargePoint, Ultra, a few of them, they were all free. So I kept my adapter, and there was one that was outside of a base that I was working on. So I just
Mhm.
plug in it, and I think it had like 6 kilowatt. Uh, I believe it was something small, like 8 hours plugged
Mhm.
in would give me possibly a full charge if I pushed it. But I keep the adapter with me. But more and more in my Tesla ownership, I find it less and less relevant that I need one.
Mhm.
Even more so, like if I'm out and about, if I feel like I need a charge, I default on superchargers over anything else. So
Sure.
yeah,
Yeah, it is nice though to think that many of those who have not received a adapter and want to charge at a third party charger will not need an adapter or will not need to seek out one or borrow one or anything like that. They'll be able to just to go up and kind of like my experience with ChargePoint, you just either scan a card or use was it Apple Pay or whatever. Like I use the
hmm,
wallet app on Apple's on iPhone to basically do the handshake for yes, I'll pay for this charging session, and then it unlocks the dock and all
do
that.
you
But
have this app?
I do have the ChargePoint app,
Okay,
and
yeah, all right.
specifically that specific wallet widget or whatever you want to call it, where
Card,
basically,
wallet
yeah,
card.
I guess it is a wallet card. Uh, yeah, I have it right. There's a ChargePoint nearby my work that I sometimes use when I really need it, but
Nice. Yeah,
typically I just charge at home. But it is exciting that more and more people are adopting NACS. It means that more efficient and faster, maybe not faster per se, but at least the more optimal charge port is being
yeah.
used by many more people, which means less headaches with CCS, hopefully. And maybe, let's hope those problems don't carry over to NACS, right? Because
Yeah.
it's just a port, it's more of the system behind it that seems to be a problem, at least with like Electrify America, where CCS, like, it's got its quirks and all that, but it seems more like it's on the back end with a lot of companies that they need to figure out how they do that handshake. Where, like, with ChargePoint, I haven't had that many issues, maybe like one or two. So
Yeah.
let's hope a lot of these companies do it right, especially with
Yeah.
a good port.
I would say the update for this week on Rivian side looks like they're not interested in adopting NACS as of a tweet I saw today, and I was like, oh,
Right.
that hurts my feelings.
I think it
Rivian's
was
so
done
close to
from.
being, huh?
I was gonna say I think I saw the same one from like Rivian updates or something like that, where
Ah, yep, yep,
they report on a
yeah,
whole bunch of updates. But yeah, especially was it you said, or I think going deeper into it, it's their CFO at a conference this weekend
yeah.
announced that. They're up for like partnerships and approaches to new tech, but they're dedicated to their CCS adventure network, which is a
They
bummer,
are
but I get it.
they're I don't. They're so close to being
Okay.
perfect. I don't get it. I want I just want uniformity with juicing the life of your car. You know, like
Mhm.
it's as simple as like how we look at gas stations and you know what diesel is and you know what you know uh you understand the pumps and their purposes, even with if they're like, oh, this is unleaded, this is the premium, this is, and all that jazz. But at the end of the day, the base fuel is still consistent, and I won't find peace with Rivian or EVs as a whole until we are consistent.
Mhm.
And uh, I get that they want that adventure network thing to work. I know they want to stand on their own and blah blah blah, but like we kind of have to wake up to reality here a little bit, Rivian, and understand that like they're not a first to market kind of thing. Their claim to fame would be that, oh well, we got the R1 or R1T out, you know, like so they were the first truck to be out there, but that's not the same as like they don't have chips on the board. They don't have bargaining to work with. They don't and they don't have an incentive to withhold. It hurts the adoption rate. Now, with the CFO saying that they wanted to, you know, partnerships or collaborations, I hope that means this is what I hope the interpretation means to me, and I already know that I'm reading into it wrong. But here's what I hope that meant. We're gonna stick with the Adventure Network, and we're also gonna move to NACS. We're gonna have both. Like, here's an adapter. Everybody wins. You can use either or. If you just work with superchargers, I don't care if you want to have your own network, premium rates. Oh look, for in-network vehicle, like do you? But the baseline has to be NACS. It has to be. It's coming from two North Americans here talking about it. It has to be. So I that's a line in the sand for me. That's where I put my foot down. I think I can't comfortably say I will be a Rivian owner until they are using NACS in some capacity.
So it
I like
sounds
the
more like
vision.
you're leaning then from our previous conversation last week that you're leaning more towards the EX30 then as a potential
Oh,
future vehicle,
Mike, I
right?
need to tell you about that.
Oh, okay.
So I might have I think I did text you little updates, but there's I didn't tell you everything, and our audience won't even know what I'm talking about at all. But so
Mhm.
last week I was editing the show, and you know, my wife comes in, and she brings the baby, and they're just hanging out with me, keeping me company, and we're all just kind of hanging out while I'm editing the show. And at this point, I was working on this show, the Evie show, and I was at the point because she came in when I was adding B-roll and overlays and stuff like that. So I had our notes where I was putting in the stuff for Volvo at that point. She
Mhm.
comes in and when you had dropped the like, oh, here's my color and everything, and I was like, I knew you'd pick that color, and I was all that. She looked over, she goes, ooh, that's a cute color. I like that color. And I was like, oh no. And she's like, yeah, that's a good color. And next, you know, I start showing us like, well, Volvo announced this one thing, blah, 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 blah. And she goes, is, so this is an SUV, but it's not? And I was like, well, and correct me here on the spot if I'm wrong, but this is what I told her. I was like, I think it's smaller than the Y, but bigger than the 3.
It's yeah, I think I mentioned last week that it's just a little bit is it a little bit shorter than the Bolt here? I got the notes right here.
She compares it to, or she, because what she asked me, and this, because this is where I think we found deal breakers for her. She goes, how does this sit next to an Ionic 5 or an EV6?
Mm, right. So I think it's a little bit I think it's a little bit shorter than those, but
Not
in
I'm not care about short. We're talking about height.
Yeah, well, it's a little bit taller than the Bolt, and the Bolt, I would say, probably stacks up around the same height as the EV6. Yeah,
Let
and the
me
Ioniq
let me
5.
say it like this. And so the EV6 sits lower than the Ioniq 5. I remember seeing that in the comparison because it's a little bit more quote unquote sporty. Let me put it to you like this. What she likes about the Model Y is that it doesn't sit so low to the ground. Even though we have this performance one and the performance sits a little lower, um,
Mhm.
she doesn't have to lay down in the car, so to say. It's very comfortable about just like walking in, you know. Now
Right.
the Model X is the ultimate walk-in vehicle. You just walk in, sit down, go, and that's kind of cool. But all that being said, like the Model Y is the most like comfortable for, we're short people, her and I, so it's very comfortable for us. But what she does not want to do is get into a car and having to sit lower than where she's at. She doesn't want to sit lower than what her line of sight would look like if she was already kind of like standing and working with things. So I mean, obviously,
Mhm.
like when we sit down, we naturally will drop, but our butt is normally where we're at right now, or a little bit higher, or what how we adjust the seats. Whereas like her Yaris, she has to sit down, like she has to get
Yeah.
low, and so I could tell she's like a bit over that because now we're moving a 6 month old around and that's not comfortable, man. It's not comfortable. So her curiosity with the Volvo, she was like, well, so how is this compared? Because she looked at the EV6 and she said, I like what the EV6 looks like, but it's too short. I would not be comfortable in that car, and
Mhm.
that's why. And I don't know if I ever told you and Drew this when I was shopping around for the car before the Model Y. That was one of the reasons why I quickly decided to stop trying to pursue it, even though I was like hunting to at least do a test drive. I stopped pursuing it because she had already said that it would not be comfortable regardless. And I was like, all right, that's fair. Fine. So, coming full circle with all that, going over, she was standing over my shoulder right here watching me just edit. She was like, that's a nice color. And I like the size. It looks roomy and it this, that, and that. And so I was like, well, babe, let me show you. Here's what. And next thing you know, I start going through the specs with her and she goes, when does this come out? I was like, yeah, next year, sometime next year. Hopefully at the beginning of 2024, but it should come
Mhm.
out. Um, the stand
That's
still,
exciting.
it still stands that the Model Y will be the default family car. So if I have
Mhm.
to sell the three, I mean, that feels like a downgrade in many aspects of it, but I am not ashamed or I'm not too big to say that like the Model 3 and the Model Y might be overkill for ownership of the two. There's a lot of overlap. That's right there. It's mostly
Mhm.
overlap. Um I just don't know if I well actually no, I do know. I don't need a Model 3 and a Model Y. It's nice to have it. The Model 3's paid off.
Mhm.
But how cool would it be if I just sold the car, take whatever profits on the table, pay off the rest of the Y, which it's not that hard to do. Either a clean slate with the EX30 or something akin. Again, even though I'm with the Rivian thing, you have as long as a car company is working with NACS, I will
Mhm.
listen, and I won't pull the trigger. I won't be overzealous. I won't just start selling things and buying things without knowing where the partnerships are or where they're aligned with. But it was very interesting to see her get excited because I showed her the colors, like, what color do you think I would pick? She goes, ooh, that black one looks nice. And I was like, Mike said the same thing. And I think I changed my answer now after having a longer stare at it. You were right, I would pick the black one,
Hmm.
or the white one. History says I would have gone with black, and I think with this particular one, I would still pick black. But
Mhm.
I think how I I think how I told you, or if not, this is definitely how I said that. Well, if she likes the yellow, I guess that means I like the yellow,
That's how it goes, right?
right?
It has to pass the House and the Senate and all that. Going
Yep.
back to the dimensions, basically, it's comparing it to the Y, since you kind of have a figure for the dimensions of the Y since you own one.
Yeah.
It's a bit shorter, from 187 inches in length in the Y to 166.7 inches in the EX30. In width, it's actually wider on the EX30. It's 80 inches versus the Y's 76 inches. But the height is also the difference. It goes from 64 inches in the Y to 61.1 inches in the EX30. The ride height, the EX30 sits just a tad bit lower from the ground, or I guess in terms of ground clearance, I should say. It's 6.5 versus 6.6 versus 6.5. So you're a tad lower to the ground in the EX30. In terms of where you sit in the seats, I think it depends on how you adjust the seat and all that. But I think on the specs, the EX30 says you've got like 41.7 inches from basically where your uh, inner calf slash backside of your knee is touching the seat. So from there, sorry, to the roof or the ceiling is about 41.7 inches. So I think you get basically the same amount of room. It's just a little bit more compact. And comparing that to
Compact
the
in length, but not width.
right, but
Hmm.
that's it's a little bit less wide, I think, than the Aptera. But I think comparing to the Aptera is a little bit silly because that's a whole different vehicle with two seats and all that. But what I'm getting at is that 76 versus 80 inches, I wouldn't think is too much of it. Oh, you know what? That's 80 inches from side view mirror edge to side view mirror edge. Uh,
Hmm.
I'm not too sure if that's what they're using, at least on actually here. There's one extra link that I could click on right here that might give me the answer. Um, yes. Okay. So basically, the overall width is 83.8 inches in the Y, but taking in basically, if you're not including the side view mirrors, it's about 64.4 inches versus 72.3 inches. Interesting. Huh. Um, so it's all kind of a mixed bag right there, I'd say. I don't think
Yeah.
you'd notice too much per se. It's not like you're comparing it to maybe like a Cadillac or a Mercedes that has a really long back or anything like that. You're having to
Right.
deal with like what feels like a boat, kind of like driving a wagon
But you would think with
sometimes.
the Volvo as a station wagon, wagons typically or historically have more, length, but
Hmm.
we're
I
talking
think this
about.
this is the exception though. This is a whole new
But that's kind of cool
product.
because I'll be honest with you, I'm not a fan of the really really long nose or trunk. I just
Hmm.
that wasn't my that's not my experience with Volvo. That's not my experience with EVs. Don't like it because too much. Like that's a lot of car to move around about parts that I don't really control within my own within the cabin, so to say. So,
Hmm.
um, yeah, no,
It
yeah,
also comes with
it's
a frunk as well, the
yeah,
EX30, and then has somewhat decent rear space as well, like we saw in the
not
video
not just
that we
with
discussed
Volvo, but
last
let me
week.
ask you this: what another thing that might be a deal breaker? I have to, I don't know enough to have a definitive answer here. So this could be within Volvo, this could be Ford, this can be GM, this can be I mean, this could even be Rivian because I don't own a Rivian. I don't know. But I need to have granular control within an app that I can at least cool the cabin down,
Hmm.
start the car if it needs car starting from any distance, not within a Wi Fi or Bluetooth distance. I'm talking the same way with the Tesla app. I need to be able to be, you know, a mile away from my car if need be and still control the rudimentary controls of like cool the car down during the summer or heat up the car in the winter and get, I care about the climate control because that's the most relevant. It's the most used button on my widget.
Hmm.
And you just sent me a screenshot. So, oh, and it's
So
Volvo too. Okay.
it's a Volvo app that I sent you, or
Oh, there it
screenshot of
is.
the Volvo app, and it looks very similar, or maybe not
Yeah.
similar, but it does have options for you to cool the cabin,
Okay.
open the charge port, unlock the car, also look at where it is, and also turn on and off the lights and all that. So I think it's from the one image that I've seen. I mean, I don't have the Volvo app. I haven't tried it out and all that. But from what I can tell, just from that one image, it's got a lot of the things that at least I think we're both looking for in a car app.
So now, if we were to nitpick, I would say like, oh, how cool would it be to have power lift? Boop, boop,
Right.
boop. Like that would be cool. I'm nitpicking at this point. My Model 3 doesn't have it. I've gotten by years without it, but it is a luxury I have with the Model Y. But again, we're not. I'm not trying to replace the Y. I
No.
am just reconsidering my position with the Model 3. And
Right.
since Rivian might not give me what I will put the line, this is the line in the sand. I'm open minded for other things. So I bring up Ford because I know Ford has their app and they said it won't change the Ford's app integration with the supercharging network. That you don't have to use another app and this and the other.
Mhm.
So I think like dream picture thing here, if I could have one, I would like to have an interactive widget the same way you can with the Tesla widget.
I would
And
think Volvo would, just because they seem to be kind
yeah,
of in that same mindset as Tesla and Lucid with
they're very tech
having,
heavy.
yeah.
They are. I mean, we were talking about last week. Look how much they like. You'd swear they're in a marriage or some type of partnership with Google because they're so tech heavy. But that's what I
Mhm.
like about EVs and before EVs. That's what I liked about Volvo. Volvo has always
Right.
been very tech heavy. So, um, all good things. So,
Yeah.
anyway,
And what surprised me is I think between last time we did the podcast and now, they doubled down on their price, saying that they expect the EX30 to be profitable at that $35,000 price point, which blows my mind because it seems like Tesla's the only one that's been able to kind of crack that code and making a
true.
like a vehicle or an EV, I should say, with
Yeah,
a decent profit margin between what it costs to assemble it and what it costs for the customer to buy it.
yeah.
So for Volvo to kind of double down, that gives me a little bit more excitement and anticipation and wonder about the EX30 and like
Hmm.
what things it's going to cut down on in a Volvo, right? Because we kind of have this mindset on Volvos of like a little bit more luxurious and a little bit more
They
uh
are. Yeah.
options with its interface and all that or its interior. And for them to say it's going to have heated seats, it's going to have this big center screen and all that, it's going to have a frunk, it's going to have decent space for the driver and the passengers and all that, yet it's coming at $35,000 and it's not going to be a GM situation like they had with the Bolt where they're bleeding out a bunch of money just to try to
Right.
sell these things at
Look how
a
quickly Ford to reverse course with the 40,000 or 45,000 Lightning. Like, nope,
oh
can't do
right.
that. That's not sustainable.
No, if you want anything that has a decent range with the Lightning, or at least even if
Yeah,
you don't, even if like you want maybe one or two options with it, it's still going to cost you way above 50,000, around
yeah.
60,000 or more, something like that. So this most recent development with the Volvo only makes me more interested. I don't think I will be a prospective buyer of the EX30, but I am a lot more intrigued by it
You
and
don't
only
have to
makes
be a
me want to see
prospective
it in
buyer
person.
because you can always use me to live vicariously if we do. Because
Dear Lord.
unfortunately, you might have convinced my wife on your color choice too. So you changed her mind. You won her over on that. So there was that. But uh, it's interesting to think about our perspectives. Like Aptera. I'm not the target audience for that, but I would be very interested to see that come to life and see if Drew is to get one, just see how that looks, and
Right.
more so than just looking at like a YouTuber. I don't care. I do care about seeing the visual elements of the car, but a YouTuber, there's still a disconnect. But when I'm watching a friend who owns the car do it, if I feel like I, more vicariously through it, like am a part of that, like, oh, so how does that do? Oh, okay, so then how does it maneuver like that? Or it'd be cool to see Drew go through the life of an Aptera
Mhm.
while knowing I would probably never ever own one because it just won't fit my lifestyle. For you,
Right.
that would maybe be with me with the EX30, and for me to you, I would probably say you're pretty set on that Ram. Uh,
Just any big truck that can go a long distance so that it can tow, right? I think that's and again, kinda like with you, it kinda has to pass the House and the Senate, so the wife
yeah,
basically has the big say on it, and it doesn't
yeah,
make sense for us to have well, we've talked about it. Everyone knows kind of this point if you listen to the podcast for long enough. I've been jumping around everywhere with these EV trucks, and what where our decision on is whether like we hold back and just not even get an EV truck, or we're kind of
Yeah.
all in on the Cybertruck, or Cybertruck we're kind of losing hope on. We're going for like the Ram, or maybe that Silverado is sounding a little bit better now with the fact that the charge point or charge ports at a certain location and they're going to be adopting NACS. But
Ooh, mm-hmm.
probably not. Here nor there, it is exciting with all three of us having different interests in different vehicles, and it's kind of like with what we discussed, I think, at the end of last year, right? With the idea that we're all trying to branch out away from the Tesla experience more into a legacy auto or different startup
But our roots are
product.
still with Tesla, and that's what keeps us three connected and grounded. And
Hmm.
we know like that's the pinnacle right there. Like at the end of the day, like Tesla's the one to beat. And as fans of EVs and fanatics of tech, that like we know like, oh, like the favorite child will for me probably always be the Tesla. But you know I can't help but, unlike Apple, I feel like it's healthy and appropriate to step out of an ecosystem or a walled garden, even though it's not a walled garden with the infrastructure that Tesla has set up. But I feel like it's appropriate to do it and healthy because um, there's more at stake, or just the livelihood of vehicles and what might
Hmm.
work for your budget, for your lifestyle, is way more. It's more applicable and important for an EV than it would be a cell phone. Like at the end of the day, cell
Sure.
phone, can you send messages? Can you communicate with people? Can you make phone calls? That's all that matters. To the point that
Very
people still use,
true.
they use jitterbugs. I mean, as long as you can communicate with people, that's all. That's the base necessity of a cell phone. So it's not, in that sense, very different from like talking about an Apple product. But when it comes to a vehicle, I mean, this is serious money. We're talking about tens of thousands of dollars, and something you're going to hold on to for many years. You gotta make those decisions a lot more seriously. You gotta take them more seriously, and to just be like, no, it's Tesla or nothing. In my opinion, is kind of ignorant. Uh,
Sure.
I have to be open minded about seeing what else is out there, just to see. But I can also say that while being a little bit of a hypocrite, because I won't let go of one of my Teslas. That's just, I feel like there's no way. And heck, but it's, I want to know, where I'm. This is not America, or in this case, because I'm saying NACS. This isn't the North America of 2019. Like, stuff, the ball has been moving now, and uh, competition is always healthy. I love competition. There's incentives everywhere. I remember how, I think it was the EV6. We were talking about it last year. It might have been the EV6 or something with that. Buy this car and we'll give you 3 years free with Electrify America or something like that. Like they're the pot sweetens. And then on the Tesla side, this week they're, pot is sweetening for supercharging, or there was another one I saw on with announcements. Sawyer's my go-to, like, oh, breaking, here it is. So whatever he tweets, I pay close attention to. But my point is, uh, rising tide, everything, rises with it. And it's really cool to see Model 3s be basically the cheapest they've ever been due to
Right.
competition and catching up on supply. It's great to see referrals are back. It's great to see free miles if you wanted to use them, and that's just within the Tesla, network here. And everybody else has their own little thing, and so it's vibrant, it's healthy, it's active, it's moving, and that's really cool. So I don't want to just be like, nah, I don't care about that. I'm just gonna. I might not be in the market for a Ram or a Lightning, but I'll look at Ford. I'll look at GM. I'll look at Volvo. I'll see. What? Sell me. It's that whole. It's the old. Sell me this pen. Sell
Right.
me on it.
I think in that same vein, I find that interesting. That I'm glad that you brought that up. Is that thinking about it now? It's kind of weird way to like consider this. but I am probably more likely to change or like, yeah, deviate away from Tesla to another vehicle than I am to deviate from Apple to Android at this point. Because the ecosystem that Apple has, like, you got uh, file storage, you've got different tablets and phones that all interact with each other, and the computers and all that, and how they interact, and like how messages get transferred from device to device, or your ability to like pick up where you left off on many different things, right? And your calendar integration and everything else. I mean, Google Calendar is kind of at the root of it, but still, um, if you use Gmail. But
Mm-hmm.
uh, it's all kind of a web of connection. It's kind of hard to break that web and move on to a new web with Android or anything else. Uh, than it is kind of with like a car, right? With like a Tesla, like it's easy to, it's one car. I mean, like you can own two cars, but like you can, in your position, you could do away with the three and get a Volvo, and you're going to be perfectly fine. It's nothing really affected, like not one vehicle affected the other too much per se. There's not much at stake there besides, I guess, money,
Mm-hmm.
right? Versus, I guess what I'm trying to get at is that it's kind of a hilarious irony in my mind with the fact that with things that are a little bit less expensive, like phones or tablets or computers, even though they Apple ones are a little bit more, or they are more expensive objectively than PCs and Windows and anything else. I'm less likely to change with those
Mm-hmm.
than it is with a 30 to 60 to $90,000 EV, uh,
Mm-hmm.
just because of what they kind of stand as these technological devices that we interact with, because I would definitely argue that cars are that. They are technology. They're just
Yeah.
an automotive form versus a pocketable slash foldable form, I
It's
guess.
not consumer tech, but it's still tech.
Right. But it's just kind of a fun irony that brought got brought up to the surface when you're talking about like phones, or I guess, yeah, your at home devices versus your driving devices, where
Mm-hmm.
it's a somehow feels a little bit easier, even though it's more expensive. It feels easier to change from Tesla to GM, or Tesla to Ford, or Ford to Hyundai, or whatever else, if you wash away kind of that bias of like, I'll always buy Ford because
Right.
Ford is the
Yeah.
best or anything like that, or Tesla's the best or anything like that, uh,
Mm-hmm.
than Apple, because there's just a lot less. Uh, I would say you interact more with like your phone, your iPad, and your computer a lot more
Mm-hmm.
than you do with your car per se, unless you're commuting all the time. But even so, like at the end of the commute, you still have to contact someone. You're not going to contact them through the car, because the car, we don't really have phones in cars anymore. We just do a Bluetooth handoff. Uh, at the end of the day, it's going to be you interacting with your device. So,
If I may, I to expand even a little bit further, just a little bit more. The reason why it's easier for us to shop around because there is in greater sense more at stake. With the cell phone, it's all trivial. It doesn't matter.
mhm,
Nobody will pick a phone if it doesn't let you communicate with people, and that's the basic thing about any cell. But
mhm,
with a car, like there's more at stake, even in the sense of like in a literal sense, your life is at stake too. You're not going to go with a car that's not safe. You
sure.
shouldn't. Um,
Well, unless money is a deciding factor, right? If you need a
right,
new car, you're kind of less
but
likely
even
to go
then,
with
like
like the super safe thing
registering
that
a
costs
car,
50,000.
yeah, registering a car in any state has certain requirements and prerequisites about being able to uh, pass the test of an inspection, whatever. We have the smog test for California. Out here in Virginia, you have to do a full vehicle state inspection. You have to have one of those stickers posted to say that it's safe, and each state has their own thing. But so there is a barrier of entry of like this vehicle is deemed safe or not safe. But even when it comes to like whether it's like airbag deployments or always on headlights or
Rollover or
rollover
traffic assist, or I guess was it
frame
ABS and all that.
for even the way the framing is of the vehicle and how it's built, because people used to think
Mhm.
like, no, I need a sturdy steel car, and it's like, no, that will probably kill you, whereas like you need something that's easily it has to crumble easy to with I'm about to get I didn't know I was gonna get that technical, but it has to take the impact, absorb the impact, and
Mhm.
disperse it, and so it needs to crumble easier. And
Needs to
like,
crumple around you, not into you,
that's right, where if you have
or
a
be stiff
steel
enough to
car.
where it runs through you.
Yeah, if you got a full steel 1950s or 60s Chevy truck that's made out of pure steel, and that you get an accident with that will crush you. That will literally just, and then you're stuck. Yeah, that's lovely. But investments in the automobile space also, take a look. It takes a little bit more time. We're just now within the last, definitely within the last decade, but I'd say maybe 2 decades, we have moved into a more tech focused, uh, specific parts of that, that matters to a car now. It's less mechanical and more electrical, and you
Mhm.
have to make sure that the tech part is up to par. Prime example, I remember in the 90s, my grandma had a Cadillac, and before that she had a Lincoln. She was a very, I buy top of the top, pinky out type of thing, uh, and it was like all about OnStar and being able to, yeah, like I very vividly remember this. My other grandma on my mom's side, she was the Volvo owner, and so like watching my grandparents, the grandparentals live through these little luxury cars, like this is kind of cool. All right, whatever. And my dad just had like a Ford truck, and yeah, it gets me from A to B. Whatever the cheapest car is, that's the one I'm gonna get. Um,
Sure. And
and
maybe
there's a
that's
balance.
where we might see this difference, right? With kind of going back with the EX30, and then was it Mary Barra hinting that an Ultium based Chevy Bolt might come back in the near future. So we might get a very nice stack up between the $35,000 cars and how they handle safety, and also how popular they might be as well.
Will you buy a new, in your case, I assume would be your next EV would be a truck. So
Mhm.
assuming that is the case, will you buy new or used as your next car?
Probably new. It's something that me and my wife hold a lot more important with, at least vehicles. With devices, we could be maybe a little bit more we can be swayed more into certified refurbished and all that, right? Uh
Yeah,
kind of like with this and all that, right? I'm using a certified refurbished device for this podcast. But with a vehicle, we're a little bit more attentive with uh how it's been treated, right? Because with our truck,
sure.
we know we bought that off the lot new. It only had 4 miles on it. Uh and it was only owned by the dealership. It was newish, but it was like 2-year-old truck at that point at the dealership. Uh but we knew no one else has really driven it as far, and like it hasn't been mistreated and all that. And things with like internal combustion engine cars, like you have to kind of worry about all those mechanical parts, and like have things been replaced? Have they been serviced at the right times and all that? Like how well are you
Mm-hmm.
taking care of
Mm-hmm.
this car versus like an EV? There's not too much to service per se. But that's a good
Man, you
point,
just
right?
sold me on an EV again without even trying to. I was thinking like, God, I don't miss that. you
Right.
you sold
We
me on
have
an
a lot of
EV.
repairs to, or maybe not repairs, but servicings to come that are
Even
coming
the
up with the
shopping
truck.
around part was aggravating because I have all this anxiety about like how is the vehicle taken care of, and oil this and transmission that and timing
Mm,
belt this and brakes and this that. And then we gotta go look at the end, like
it's way
yeah,
too
you're right,
much.
yeah,
And then
yeah,
everyone's like, well, you should probably, if it's a used one from a private seller or even anything like that, you should probably ask them to take it to a mechanic, or if you could take it to a mechanic for them to get like a diagnosis of it as well. Just it's so much headache versus like an EV. Uh, it does kind of make more sense to kind of go the certified refurbished route with it, because there's not too much you have to worry about besides like, did they supercharge it? If it's a Tesla, did they supercharge it like every single day? Like, how many cycles has it gone through, right? Even if like it's maybe only a 6 month old car and someone's used it for those 6 months, like how well was it used in those 6 months? So it's a little bit more different in regards to what you have to pay attention to with a used EV versus a used internal combustion engine car or a new EV. But I guess to
Mm-hmm.
answer your initial question, we still probably would buy new just because it's something that I don't know, it's a weird quirk that me and my wife kind of follow through with. We like going through the beginning of the car to the end of the car, but as a caveat, we didn't really have choices with the first cars that we owned with the Civic that I had and the Volvo that I had. I guess the Volvo I knew was taken care of decently because it was owned by my grandpa for basically its whole life. The Civic, we
What's
didn't
with
know
grandparents and
besides
Volvos, man?
I don't know, but at least with like my Civic, like all we knew is that it was owned by an old lady that only drove it to church. So we were pretty confident that it was probably going to be okay. With my wife, she owned like a Mustang and a Mazda, and those were tentatively cared for all right, but like the Mustang had a lot of issues with like its rev limiting and all that, and then I guess the timing belt as well. And the Mazda just at one point decided to not was it not accelerate or not steer at some point. Like we took it to the dealership and
Jeez.
I don't know. It was we've
Oof.
had our share of like dealing with used cars and maybe that's kind of scarred us at this point and
Well,
we
my
kind of
I'm
need
not.
to
I
get our
don't know much
mindset
about
of
Mazdas.
mhm.
Yeah, those cars I'm not too familiar with, but Mustangs I know are notoriously prone to have things happen to them. Ford isn't known for its QA, so
Especially with their trucks.
especially with
Many
their
issues
trucks.
with death wobbles and other things like that. That's
Yeah,
mainly with the, I think the 250s and 350s, but I think some 150s have dealt with a lot of those
sure.
kind of issues with engine blocks and anything else. So it is a good statement to bring up is would you buy a new EV truck or would you be willing to go used? And I think the determination is based on timing, right? On when we're ready and able to buy a new car. And also, what's the perks financially with buying the new car versus the used car? Because we saw with the F-150s and Rivians, you couldn't get one for sale price. You'd have to pay an egregious amount, either through dealership markups or just by used market uh, forces or external factors with that where you just can't get the car for what its MSRP is because that's just how the market is. So
I
there's a little
hate
bit
that.
more of an right. There's a little bit more of an incentive to buy like reserve this truck now, and
Yeah.
then at the time that it's time to pay up and receive delivery, it's like, do we need this truck or not? Is
Yeah.
that $100 worth losing or not? Right. So with stuff like the Cybertruck, it's like, well, those things aren't going to be affordable for a very long time even if it starts at like 70,000. You're not going to see that on the market like on cars and bids or anything like that. It's going to be starting at like 80 or 90,000, and then even so, uh who knows if the price is going to increase over time like we saw with the Ys. Like it dipped a little bit after the Y was delivered, right? We saw like
Yeah.
around I think May or June of 2020 that it dipped a little bit, but then it skyrocketed up to a crazy amount and then has kind of
Mm-hmm.
waved sine maybe not sine wave, but it's hovered kind of its way down to a lower price and now
You're talking about the
threes
Model
and
Y?
Ys or threes
Yeah.
they've come down to a pretty good price point at this point, but
The
that's
Model
after
Y
like
was probably
3
the
years.
best that ever was when it was the standard range for what 40,000, I think 41,000.
You're talking about the 1 or 2 week 40,000
Yeah,
standard range,
yeah,
yeah.
that was the best. Why I was still to this day like that would have been the time. Anybody,
Maybe
hindsight's 2020 looking back, but that was the best time to buy a Y up until probably I guess now with all these price drops happening. You
mhm.
bring up a good point though. I hear what you're saying because it also depends like because we're talking about in the future, what are the rebates or the tax benefits and the relief and stuff going to be like for new and or used? We don't know. But I I can't say I'm that black and white about it. I think I'm a bit more. I'm a certain shade of gray about making that decision because one part that you hit up on that I agree is that it really depends at what time are we ready to buy.
Mhm.
Um, a lot of people like I can't necessarily say it's the people like listeners of the show because like they most of them have been around, but I don't know. Like on Twitter, I get this a lot on Twitter specifically, but Like people don't understand that I spent years of aggressive saving and disciplines with my money about buying the Model 3 when I did in 2019. That was a decision I made when I first saw the Model 3. And I was a
Mhm.
different person back then. Like I was just I only needed to look out for Randy back then. So that a Model 3 fit Randy's lifestyle from 2016 to 2019. I from the moment it was announced, I started saving. And I've
Right.
never done anything. That was the most disciplined I've ever been with my money, where I was like, I want to make this a
No
reality
Burger
for
King
me.
this week.
No Starbucks.
Yeah. There we
no,
go. That's more applicable.
that's more applicable to me. I was even careful about certain, like I was in desperate need of a MacBook and I just didn't. So like I spent, like, there were compromises. There was sacrifices made in some points, and other points I continue living the life. And I worked really hard to just my point I'm getting is like I worked really hard to save the money because I knew at the time I would never buy. I This might be the last new sedan I buy, and it's as an EV too. Because I did in 2019, I did not know the value of the battery cells, the network. Like I knew enough, but I only through Model S's. You know, like Model S's and X's were really the. It was just Tesla was a different company. There was way they were not taken seriously, and there was a lot of unknowns. But I was willing to make that risk. It's the reason why my wife did not pull the trigger a long time ago to get a Tesla, because she didn't trust the, like, how am I supposed to trust what the battery is saying? You know, like I need more data. So she let me be the person to take the leap of faith, and she goes, all right, well, that's money on your line and we'll see how that works. But then she she was like, oh yeah, no, I was wrong. And so now we take Teslas very seriously for what they offer and what we can do. But I
Right.
I locked into a multi-year commitment to myself that I wanted to buy a new EV as the pinnacle. Like, good job, Randy. This is I come from, very. I did not have the best cars growing up or nothing like that in my house, and up until the EV, I had bought a brand new Jetta, but that was more like I bought the Jetta, and then they announced a Model 3, and I was like, oh, well, I guess I'm doing this again. Thank God I was able to. I think I had a trade in value with like 7 grand or something like that with the Jetta, which was not bad. I paid 11. So I
That's
had that
not a
car
bad,
for I had it
not
for
bad
3 years.
depreciation factor. Yeah.
Yeah, I had it for 3 years, and I paid 11, and I got 7 out of it, I believe. I have to go. I have to go look at my old Tesla experience videos to see. Randy back then knows those numbers, but to my point, I knew what I wanted and how I wanted to do it back then. Now it's a little bit different. The landscape has changed. I'm not opposed to buying used. In fact, I might prefer buying used because there's less maintenance about what needs to be done. Like, over the air diagnostics are a thing. Like, you can get a lot of information just from looking at release notes and stuff like that about the health of a car.
Hmm. Or even
Really,
some third-party apps, kind of like with I think Lynn in the Talos of Discord likes to plug a lot of their like diagnostic data they get from a third-party app on their car, where they're able to
yeah,
track their degradation a whole lot more accurately than what you and I see with just, oh, it says 303 at
yeah,
100%.
yeah,
Cool.
yeah. I really only care about the going through the DMV if do we have a clean title. That's really
Hmm.
because the clean title then equates back to what I was saying about, like, safety of the vehicle.
Right.
Like, is has the framing been compromised? Is like I really, first and only, before anything else, clean title. I'm not a guy who wants to buy you know salvaged vehicles and use them as fixer uppers or anything like that. That's not my hobby. So
Hmm.
I will
Oh yeah,
buy.
such a nightmare, right? My
Yeah,
wife and I have a friend who needed to buy a new car, and so she bought it from a dealership, and then she didn't get the title. It was like a used car and all that, and she's like, "Hey, what's up with this? Like, can I get the rest of the info on this car?" and she didn't hear back from him for a bit, and then they came back and they said, "Well, actually, we got this car from an auction house, and
Oh,
they didn't give us all the papers." And then our friend was like, then what are we gonna do?" Right? Because if they didn't give you the papers and you don't have the papers, then I don't want this car then. So it was a whole tirade or wonderful journey, wonderful
right,
being put very loosely, of her having to give the car back, get her money back from the dealership, and then them having to give the car back to the auction house and all of that. So that way they could get all that sorted out. But like, yeah, going for used cars can be very tumultuous. And that's something
yeah,
that even with EVs you still have to pay attention to, right? Like how was this car treated? Does it still have everything fine? Like both physically and also paper wise, right? Making sure that everything's good there. And then after all that, is it a fair value for the car that you're buying? And
right,
do you really need it, or is it something else that you have to maybe break into the framework of comparison in regards to, do I really need a Model 3, or is a Bolt like decent enough for what we need it for? Or like maybe we go hybrid because that's just something that's a little bit less costly. And yeah, maybe in the end it actually is more costly in regards to maintenance and everything else, but for the time being, do we need a car, right,
yeah.
to get something done? And that's kind of
And
how
how
it
soon do
breaks
you
down
need
in our
it?
mind.
Because we can all want that $35,000 Bolt or EX30 or what have
Mhm.
not, but if you can't wait 6 months to a year, like there's questions it has to pass your own filters of what your requirements are at that time of hunting. And I remember very very recently, I remember even talking about it on the podcast, like I stopped looking at a hybrid RAV4 because I would have to wait 6 months. I'm like, I don't know.
Right.
I like same thing with the EV6 and or I like the EV6 more than I like the Ionic 5 at the time, but it's just all the things. I was just like, it's there's a waiting period for all this stuff, and I just don't have that type of time. And it just so happens that a Performance Model Y, I would have gotten it the soonest, and that was more important to us than brand recognition. Like, oh, that's the Tesla. Didn't really care, and you know, having time since I even asked you the question, I think even for myself, I guess it depends what the price of the car would be. If we're talking a car that's like $30,000, and I know I'm gonna want it in a year or two, can I save 30,000 or get close to like a hefty down payment or something? Like, can I offset the cost of that? That might
Mhm.
be more realistic. And I'm talking new, buying a new car that's $35,000. Can I? How realistic can I make that happen? Whereas like buying a new Polestar, I don't think I would buy a new Polestar because that's too expensive for my blood. I wouldn't buy a new
Right.
Tesla. It's too expensive for my blood. The Model Y was a family decision. That was a communal car. It was a little bit different. And House and Senate said, "Well, we will raise the budget or the debt deficit." All that. It was a little bit different. That one was not an independent committee. That was a collective decision. But for me, as on my own, like if I wanted, because any car outside of the Y is going to be a hobby car or whatnot, and I still stand by not wanting to ever take out another loan again for a car if I can avoid it. So
Mhm.
I can I make $35,000 work, give or take? Like that's a real question that I have to filter. And how soon do I need a car? Because if let's say I really want that 2024 EX30,
Mhm.
but say I can't put at least 15,000 or 1750, whatever, half, at least half the payment or something down. If I can't do that, then I would wait. And then now I'm buying used if I really wanted that one. What if I wanted the Rivian with the kitchen? I want my kitchen, you know? That then I have to buy used now and now I have to wait. Well, then I guess I'll
Mhm.
wait. And then so for me, it's not even necessary on top of, is it a clean title? How has it been taken care of? If the title's good, I could probably get around if the truck has been taken care of, if I'm really dead set on this kitchen. But then it's all about cost, I guess. At that point, realistically, it's like what are the necessities, and what takes priority over this?
Hmm.
Trying to buy a house, then do I really need to buy a car, or should I just sell and offset? And like, I'm there's a lot of layers that go into all that. So I don't think it's as black and white for me about buying a new anything. You know,
Hmm.
if they honored the pricing that we saw back then with the Cybertruck, end of 2024 or end of 2023, early 2024, they start shipping. If our queue was up in line next, like, all right, here you go, Randy. Here's your Cybertruck that you reserved many moons ago. Does it fit the line? So much has changed. I almost feel like I should probably
Sure.
buy it just so I can turn around and sell it at a prop. Who wants this car? Or who wants this
Right.
truck?
Sell
Oh,
me
go.
this
What if I
truck.
what if I like it? I want to keep. No, no, no.
That's our
Don't think like
fear,
that.
is that at least where me and my wife are at in regards to the Cybertruck, how we're feeling this week, uh,
Right.
is
Right.
right. Is that at least in my mindset, and I'm still trying to convince her a little bit, but I think we're probably getting there on the same page. Is that it'd be nice to try it out. If that means we have to buy it and try it out, so be it. I think financially we'll probably be there at that point. Whenever we get our delivery date, right? Whether
I'm
it's
not
the end of the
convinced.
year,
Yeah.
probably not. Most likely this time next year. We'll most likely financially be in that position to be able to hopefully take delivery of a Cybertruck. But to try
Right.
it out and see whether it satisfies our needs, if we like it or don't like it. Already, I can tell you with like having to wash the car last week, I kind of got tired of washing the car with like managing the
Mm-hmm.
paint and making sure everything looks good. I'm like, it'd be nice just hosing it off or like buffing it off, and that's it. Like not having to worry about too much because it's just stainless steel that can handle the elements decently fine. Maybe
Yeah.
all you have to do is just clean the windshield, and that's really all you really need to do because the rest of the car or the truck is gonna look how it's gonna look. It's already gonna be a statement. Putting bugs
Right.
on it's just gonna be like, that's a very dirty, weird looking truck. But we're probably in that same mindset of get the truck, if we don't like it, sell it. Maybe we get a profit off of it, or we sell it for the same price that we got it for, and net even, whatever. Um, and then
Right.
from there, move on. Find out that maybe EV trucks right now, or I guess in 2024 slash whenever it comes out, maybe the EV trucks in the 2020s are not what we're looking for our use
Mm-hmm.
case, but
Mm-hmm.
maybe the ones in 2030, like I push everything else to, maybe the ones in 2030 are what we're looking for with like the F-250 Lightnings or anything else like that.
Right.
One thing I did want to get your opinion on though
That's it.
is this little company that has kind of made the rounds on the media recently called Telo, and they're specifically going with the mindset of a compact electric truck. And I thought of you when I saw this truck because you also have that mindset of I don't really need a big truck,
Right.
and the Rivian's probably maybe as big as you guys want to go. Maybe Cybertruck is kind of that exception, but you're also thinking of like the EX30, where it's a
Yep.
compact SUV and it's more like just a compact car rather
I'm a
than a
compact
compact
guy.
SUV.
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically what Tello is, as far as I can tell. It's a compact EV truck in which they're new. They I'm not really going to believe
Wow.
everything that they have on the site per se, but the idea intrigues me over the fact that it's a small electric truck, the same length as a Mini Cooper electric at
Yeah.
152 inches in length. And they say that it still offers decent specs of 350 miles of range in a truck. Um, has like 500 horsepower. Who cares about that really per se? You're more intrigued with either the range 0 to 60 or price, right?
That's
0 to
right.
60 of like 4 seconds is what they're
Yep.
claiming. Okay, whatever.
That range though.
Um, not bad. 350 for what they claim because they're not including state and federal electric vehicle tax credits and all that, but they're somewhat confident in saying, because they have it on their site, that they are able to reach $50,000 with this compact electric truck. And it kind of
Wait,
gives me
what's the number you said? They're confident.
50K for a
50K.
base price.
Okay.
For a truck that weighs probably around, like what they say, around 4,400 pounds, is the size or the length of a Mini Cooper, but still has the capabilities of a truck. And it's kind of getting that mindset that, like, I've been talking with a lot of different coworkers, is like, people don't really need big trucks. I
No.
Heck, here in the Bay, I see many small trucks, like small old F-150s that are just driving around, and all people need is that exterior room for 2x4s that they get from the hardware store, but they still
You
kind of
need
want
a
their cabin.
bed when something can't fit within the dimensions of your cabin. That's when the bed is almost like a
Right.
necessity.
And what they also offer is something that Drew's very, like, a big fanatic over, is that pass through or that midgate,
I
where
saw.
you're able to fold down one of the seats or both the seats and able to store longer objects. And, like, they've got, for example, like, surfboards. They also seem to be going like the Rivian route of having like a little step on the side of it. But you can put surfboards in there. You can put very long 2x4s, or a big ladder or anything like
Mm-hmm.
that, or some big plate or board. What am
This
I
is a
trying to say?
very Euro centric car or vehicle,
It
excuse
is.
me.
It reminds me of Canoe, but in a
It
good
does.
way.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. No, it definitely. The first thing when I open up the link is like, I'm looking at a canoe. No, I'm not. So let me say this because Europe trip is still fresh in my brain.
Hmm.
Um, this thing would kill it in Europe, especially in Italy. Nothing but hatchbacks and compacts everywhere I looked. Um, I first glance at it, just looking at, I did the comparison to the Tacoma that it does, and the Tacoma's a small truck as is, right? So
It's
smaller
getting
than a.
bigger, but yeah.
It is getting bigger, but the ones that I think about, like pre-pandemic, the ones that
Hmm.
I was pretty interested in buying once upon a time, they're the size of the Rivian, but like the Tacoma was the truck for me, not the F-150. I would have gotten a Tacoma above anything else.
Hmm.
Um, in a different life, had I not bought the Model 3, I would have gotten the Tacoma instead. So to see something literally side by side with it be two-thirds the size of a Tacoma is really weird because what they're emphasizing, and this is important, what they're emphasizing is that you're not really compromising on the bed of a truck.
No.
It is doing a side by side with the Tacoma, and the bed is basically the same.
I think
Hmm.
what is the most striking feature about it for me, even though it still seems very concept, of course, and it is very much still a concept that they've got. It doesn't seem like they've got much going besides they have a design, they have an idea, they got a prototype. Um, but they also claim that they want to, like, basically it's a one size fits all product where you could get the truck, but you can option it up to an SUV where you could put
Yeah.
seats basically in the bed and then put a cover on it, and there you go. Now you've got 3 rows where it's basically 2 seats, 3 seats, 2 seats. So you've got your 7-seater for probably around $60,000 or something like that. If you're including probably state and federal incentives at the end of the day, whenever this thing comes out, if they're able to achieve that starting price of 50K. Uh, it's a very interesting product that I saw it this week. I'm like, this seems fun. And I think we're getting towards that time where the fun EVs can exist. It's not a whole what's it called? You're not giving up a whole bunch of stuff just to, like, get into the market. You're able to be a little bit more creative and be able to offer something that no one else is really offering.
I I I like that it looks weird. I'll start
Mhm.
by that. One thing that took me some time to warm up to, and now I can't unsee it, is that like I really like how the Cybertruck looks. It's
Mhm.
it's weird in all the right ways. I like that. I like something that stands out. Aptera's weird. I like how things look when they're weird. It's a weird looking truck. It's such a, I don't know. It's just it's weird, but it would meet the requirements of what I would need. Can I, like, here? Let me give you a few real life applications where I would need a truck. Um, in the past, I needed it, and I had to find a different way to make it work. I had to replace a water heater. That
Hmm.
could have done better with a bed that I could put it in. Anytime I ever go to IKEA,
Big old boxes.
big old boxes. Um, I have a bike. Don't
Hmm.
maybe I look like this because I can't take it anywhere, but I do have a bike, and I
It'd
could
be
you
nice
could
to just throw it in the bed versus have to like get on a ladder, reach over to the top of the vehicle, and put it on top
yeah,
of the rack up there, or have to buy a whole third party accessory that goes
yep,
into the hitch if you have that hitch
yeah.
installed on your car, and then mount it on there and hope it doesn't vibrate itself into the back of your car's bumper and all that chip
And
paint.
the last one I would say that's the most important. I've been in situations where I wish I could have tailgated, hang out with some people, and I'm a outdoor griller. I like to cook and use the grill for a lot of things and stuff like that. I
Hmm.
I, I mean, even just corn on the cob and put that on the grill. Ooh, I like anything. Like my strength is outdoor grilling, and I used to many times. When people come over to the house, and I like to cook where I can. Um, my wife's a better cooker with most things, but when it comes to like steaks or something, I'm the guy. But tailgating, just in general, if we're gonna go meet up somewhere, um, and oh, here's an example. When I'm that quick little intermission that you, me, and Drew had where we met up like at In and Out, and
Hmm.
it was just a very quick hey, hi, bye type of thing, but just so we can make that happen and all of us hang out. Imagine being able to do, because I cross many paths that do things like that, maybe a little bit longer, but point being that how many times would you go to like an In and Out or Starbucks or whatever, a Dutch bro, and there's no seating, and there's like, that's fine, just take it to the truck, and
Hmm.
then just tell I'm an outdoor kind of guy, I love being outside, and tailgating is a thing. Can't really
An
tailgate with
outdoor
a
urbanist.
I am. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh man, no, I mean, let's take this baby to the mountains. I see a photo with this Telo going into the, like, let's take it to the mountains. Let's go. I'll hang out, but I can't do that with the Model 3. Trust me, I've tried, but I can't. It's not the same. Oh, let's eat inside the car. And I'm over here like, hey, no, no, don't get it on the seat. No, then I'm just a hot mess the whole time, getting anxious that people are dirtying my car. But
Hmm.
tailgating is important to me. Back when I would go to, you know, I would go, you know, I don't know, go watch the Chargers when they were down in San Diego, or go see the Padres, or I mean even our goals and stuff like that. So we have teams in San Diego that we go tailgate all the time. Half the fun about going to sports events was the tailgating. And I picked that from my dad. I picked that up from him, and that's what they would always do. So I'm a product of that environment. But I never bring it up because it's like it's so subjective, and it's like it's not really relevant to anything. But to me, it's like, nah, you can. How cool it'd be to set up a little camper, and what if I want my kid or whatever, like they want to go camping, and I just like, all right, go camp in the truck or whatever. Like I had those types of experiences growing up, and I would like to do something cool like that.
Hmm.
And so I tell you all that because for the most part, I think any truck would meet those like my basic necessity of what I would need to do. I'm not a builder. I'm not a welder. I'm not moving big parts and lumber or whatever. So like I don't need a specific anything. I'm not towing. Definitely not towing livestock. So for me, I was like, maybe the Telo. I mean, if it's price best served, like, oh, this is the best price for it, and it does exist whenever it comes out. I'll never say no to anything. I mean, I'll keep an open mind about something, but
Sure.
um,
They do claim it is going to be the world's most efficient EV pickup, which uh, it's very telling that they want to get there and that they probably can because, I mean, right now, efficient EV trucks are not a thing. They're more efficient than their gas counterparts, but they're not really as efficient
is it using the
as.
NACS?
So that's the question, right? They don't put anything. All they have is that one page, as far as I can tell. I
Yeah,
clicked through the site while
same.
you're telling me about this, and I can't find any other page besides that one long scrolling page,
Yeah,
and not even on the very bottom where you can pre-order for $152 in reference to the 152 inches in length of the truck. I
silly.
can't find any other page. I guess probably if you put in your information on the pre-order, then it ships you to the put in your financial information, all that. But like, I can't find anything on charging port. They say they can go 20% to 80% in like 20 minutes or something like that, uh, which is insane. Um, but I don't know. Again, this is just something that I saw in the media. I looked into it. Uh, I've looked into it more today, and it's just a nice, neat idea that I think a lot of startups can really get into and probably get a nice piece of the market as something that other car manufacturers aren't probably producing right now because they've kind of got their own mindset, especially with legacy auto, of let's just electrify the Tacoma. Let's just
Right.
electrify the Outback. Let's just
Yeah.
electrify the Sorrento and all that. Uh, where some of the startups like Tesla or Rivian are like, let's make something a little bit more affordable, but also a tad different than what we've got right now. And that's what maybe I love a lot more about the startups, especially like Canoe and Telo and a couple others, is that they've got wacky, weird ideas. And if they're able to bring it to market like Aptera is trying to do, and it seems like they might do it pretty successfully at this point, as long as they're playing their cards correctly and keeping in pace. Uh, it is a potential product that I would love to at least sit in and check out. And if the time is right and we're looking for something like it, the option is there versus no option at all. And I'm all
Yeah.
about options, which is why I'm excited about it. It's another option for those that want something like an El Camino of days past, uh, but don't want to get a Rivian for $80,000, which is a whole lot bigger than an El Camino, where this is
Right.
a little bit more on that wavelength of it's a little bit bigger, but like you still kind of get the truck functionality while still being compact. And I don't think we
It
need a
goes
huge
over
truck from everyone.
300 miles, and that right there will sell my wife on really anything.
Hmm.
I had to show her a chart. Um, oh, probably when I was editing the podcast last week, because she was like, "Oh, so what's the range?" I was like, "Oh, I think I said 365 or 375, right? Or 275 for the EX30, the Volvo."
275, yeah.
275, and she goes, it's sub three. I was like, well, look, let's pause for a cause for a second. Let's, and I pulled out a calculator and started crunching numbers. I was like, look, here's what we're really working with the Model 3 at 100%, and here's what you're
Hmm.
really working with the Model Y at 100%. And at no point do we actually need to hit all 100% of that in a single commute anywhere. Most of the
No,
time,
and you never
traveling is
do.
obviously like when you're doing a road trip thing out here. If we want to go to the mountains, that's a different story. But like that's a day plan. Like that's no different than having to stop at the gas station then at that point, right? Like we
Right.
have to let's try to make it as close to apples, even though it's really impossible to do it. But like you have to make when you have to like we're gonna have to stop and get gas then like that. It's the same. We're gonna have to charge. But when
Hmm.
it comes to like our real day to day, you don't every day need to go to a charging station, and you don't every day need to go to a gas station.
No.
So I showed the numbers, and I'm pulling 270 something. I think 278, 275. Something. I'm pulling 270 above 275. I think with the Model 3 at 100%.
Still
I don't
within
try.
the neighborhood though.
Yeah, but I don't charge it to 100. I charge it to 80. And it's like with the Y, we charge it to 80, and so that's really closer to like 260 or two what. So where I was getting at, and I showed is like 275 is not a bad range because we're not even using that. How
Mhm.
cool would it be if we could have, LFP, and you could charge it 100% all the time, and then you're effectively right where you are right now with
Mhm.
my long range Model 3. That saved my butt over the years to let the battery degrade to the point where it's in line with the Model Y today. And if I could just, I would have never gotten a long range if LFP was a thing that could meet the same standards back in 2019.
Sure.
So when it comes to range, I don't care as much anymore, but I know there's a sense of comfort when it's like when I at least see a 3. It's like, all right, well, for a truck, I will be happy for a truck. If I see a 3, XX next to it, then I don't really care. But practicality, it's no longer about really range because they all kind of get the same. We see the point where it's like where we're at today with battery cell technology and charging efficiencies, you're going to be somewhere between 250 and 3. Anything that's, I don't want 250 personally. I'm happy with 275. Another reason why I kind of like the EX30, to be honest, because it's like, oh, that's a number I now know I'm comfortable with. But as how many times I got hit the nail on the head on this one? It's like it's really about charging efficiency that I would care more about. So I
Mhm.
hope Telo, for example, can do a way that makes efficient charging. I care more about
Right.
efficiency than I do um, capacity, and
I
that's
think my
something
ideal
supercharging had taught me
version of
that.
this truck is an LFP battery with an NACS port. So that way you could easily take it to a supercharger, plug it in, charge it to 100 if you want, even though it'll take a while. But like even if you're charging at home, charge it to 100, go 350 miles on a single charge, but you're not going to do that. You're probably going to take it like maybe a max 300. If not, you still got spare and all that. But like still, uh, like Drew has nailed into this podcast's kind of like core fundamentals as well, is like it's not about the range, it's about the charging infrastructure, which I think
Hmm.
we both agree on is that that's what you need. You can do 500 miles, it's just going to cost you more. And then also, does it even matter if like I don't know, uh, to put it plainly, if you're doing like a road trip or going on a long trip, you're more than likely not going to go 300 miles without stopping to go to the bathroom or get some food or something like that. Uh,
I would. So my thing is that's not true for my case. I can pretty much commit to sitting. Dude, I did a 13-hour flight. Like I can commit to sitting
mhm.
still for hours if I need to.
You still
Um,
have to change a dirty diaper though.
yeah, that is true. Um, but it's not really about that. It's really um, what good is 500 miles if I have to stop for like 2 hours to let it charge? I'm losing time because the reason why I'm so dead set on NACS and I have to use superchargers is because I'm so familiar with the routes and how they're spaced out throughout the country that I'm not going 250 miles in any direction without stopping somewhere regardless. Like I get somewhere between 20 and 37%, charge up to 80, and it catapults me again to somewhere 20 to 37%, charge me up to 80, and it catapults me to like I'm so used to that, and I'm so in and out of the car by doing that route. And I'm talking about
Mhm.
road trips, so few and
Yep.
far in between. That I'm like, it's so much more important to me to have efficient charging than anything else. Because if I'm stopping at 80%, I'm really at 216 miles, I think, give or take,
Okay.
for my Model 3, which means the Model Y is pretty in par with that, 202 to 216. I wrote those numbers down recently, so they're kind of fresh in my head. So I'm not going 250 miles in any direction without there being a pause for the cause. And I juice up for 25 minutes, give or take, and then I'm back on the road. And that's enough time
Mhm.
to whatever, just take a break. In this case, if it's a road trip, when we stop to charge, all right, babe, your turn. All right, babe, your turn. All right, I'll send it back with him. All
Mhm.
right, I'll change him. That's the conversations we're having. So in those routes where you are road tripping, Okay, it's fine. It's whatever. It's like I think us in America are more adamant about road trips when I realize that most people in the rest of the world don't really road trip like that. They don't care to. It's not part of their daily life, and even
They
more
have
so,
better public infrastructure for
they do.
transportation.
And even people in America don't really. I know I'm a weird exception to the rule. I know I'm a funny breed about it. Most people aren't doing what I do, but for those rare instances that you do need to have the range to go anywhere, people are probably using 200 miles. So 350 is overkill, I think. But I don't mind having it if it's not LFP. I care more about battery degradation at that point, especially from a company that I don't know their infrastructure. I don't know what their battery cells look like. I don't know anything about the company, so I have to take it with a grain of salt. What the health of the batteries could be. The only battery system I trust is Tesla's
Hmm.
because that's the only one I'm familiar with. But
Sure.
um, yeah.
Cool.
So those are my
Well,
thoughts.
with that, thanks for joining us this week, everyone. Appreciate it. If I get this out late, I apologize. But again, thank you very much. We'll catch you next week, hopefully. And yeah, see you later.
We'll
Bye.
see you in the next one. Take care.